Frieren Beyond Journey's End Season 2 covers three major story arcs: the continued Northern Travels arc, the Divine Revolt arc, and the early chapters of the Golden Land arc. Together, these arcs push the story deeper into the northern regions, where the journey becomes more dangerous and the themes grow heavier. In this video, I'll be explaining the continued Northern Travels arc. This arc follows Frieren, Fern, and Stark as they move farther north, facing harsher lands, stronger enemies, and quieter moments that test their bond as a party. So let's begin. The arc begins in the northern lands, where Stark, Fern, and Frieren are preparing fish for breakfast. Stark is surprised to see Frieren awake so early. While they're talking, Frieren searches through the bushes and finds a strange stone. Soon after, Fern notices that her magic isn't working. Frieren explains that the stone is the reason. It's called a Nullifying Crystal, and it cancels magic within a few meters. Frieren says the crystal is extremely valuable enough to buy an entire mansion. However, they can't carry it with them, since it nullifies magic. Keeping it would be too dangerous during their journey. Before throwing it away, Frieren explains that if a large amount of mana is poured into the crystal, it begins to glow. They continue traveling, and Frieren says they should reach a village by evening. She also explains that the northern plateau lies far ahead. It's a volcanic region, but there haven't been any eruptions in centuries, and it's now known for its hot springs. As they walk, the ground suddenly collapses beneath them. All three fall, with Frieren and Fern landing safely on Stark. They soon realize they've fallen into an underground ore deposit filled with nullifying crystals. Their magic is completely suppressed, and Frieren tells Stark that they'll have to rely on him. Without magic, she and Fern are just ordinary girls. The trio begins exploring the cave. Fern notices animal bones scattered around, possibly from a large creature, while Frieren calmly sleeps. Stark says he's the complete opposite of her, as he's terrified. Suddenly, a monster attacks, and Stark manages to protect both Frieren and Fern. He asks Frieren how she can stay so calm in a situation like this. Frieren replies that it's because she has entrusted her life to him. Stark admits that his instinct is to run away, and Frieren simply tells him that they'll run away together. Frieren causes the crystal to shine, triggering a flashback. Eisen asks Himmel how he can trust someone who once fled his own village. Hero Himmel replies that whenever someone wants to run, they'll run together, because they're a party. The scene shifts between the past and present as both parties flee side by side. In the present, the trio finally escapes the cave and prepares to continue their journey. However, Stark suddenly collapses, saying his legs have given out and he can't walk any further. The trio reaches the Great Sand Forest. Stark goes off to gather supplies for lunch, but when he returns, he finds no one at their camp. Thinking they might be nearby, he heads out to look for them and also plans to catch some fish. Meanwhile, Frieren and Fern are bathing in a nearby river. Fern carefully cleans the bracelet and hair clip that Stark and Frieren gave her. Frieren notices that Fern is smiling and comments that she seems happy whenever she takes care of her belongings. Fern explains the reason is simple: they're gifts. She lost everything during the war, so seeing her small collection of treasured items grow makes her happy. As they continue talking, Stark suddenly barges in, and Fern immediately calls him a pervert. Later, Stark apologizes, saying he didn't know they were bathing. Fern tells him she isn't angry while calmly brushing Frieren's hair. As the trio continues their journey, Frieren asks Stark if he feels comfortable traveling with them. Just as they arrive at a fork in the road, Frieren decides they'll stay the night at an inn and heads inside. At the inn, they meet Werble, who greets them. Werble explains that demons are rampaging across the northern front again, and he needs to return as soon as possible. He asks Stark to join them for 2 or 3 years, saying the war isn't going well and they're short on manpower. Stark refuses, stating that he's the warrior of this party. Then Werble asks Frieren to persuade him, but she replies that they should do whatever they want, believing that Stark might not even want to stay with them. Later, Stark talks to Fern and explains why he rejected Werble's offer. When he was at his limit in the past, it was Fern who encouraged him and gave him the strength to keep going. Because of that, he has no intention of leaving the party. Fern tries to give Stark a head pat, which completely freaks him out. The next day, Werble parts ways with them, and Frieren, Fern, and Stark continue their journey forward. The trio arrives at Fable Village, where Frieren agrees to clean a hero statue in exchange for a spell that helps scratch hard-to-reach itchy spots on your back. At first, they assume the statue belongs to Hero Himmel, but it turns out to be someone else.
Frieren explains that the statue is of the hero of the South. She explains that he was one of the heroes who challenged the Demon King and is often called humanity's greatest hero. At the time, the biggest threats weren't just the Demon King, but the 7 Sages of Destruction. Frieren's party managed to defeat only 2 of them, while 5 escaped. Of those 5, 3 were later killed by the Hero of the South. In just 1 year, the Hero of the South wiped out the Demon King's frontline forces and reached the central supply route of the Demon Army. He eventually faced Shelt the Omniscient, along with the remaining sages. According to legend, his magic allowed him to see 1,000 years into the future. Even knowing he would be defeated, he still fought. Before falling, he managed to kill 3 of the sages and slay Shelt the Omniscient. Thanks to his actions, the people of this village were freed from the control of the 7 Sages of Destruction. Frieren explains that his body was never found, and legends claim that he and Shelt are still fighting somewhere. However, Frieren bluntly says the demons probably just ate him. As they begin cleaning the statue, a flashback occurs. In the past, Frieren rejects the Hero of the South's request for help, saying she can't defeat the enemy he's facing. He calmly says he expected that answer and explains his magic, revealing that he can see the future. He tells her that in 1 year he will die fighting Shelt the Omniscient and the 7 Sages of Destruction. However, he also says that a hero will soon visit her, someone who will eventually defeat the Demon King. Frieren finds this hard to believe. Before leaving, the Hero of the South asks her for one favor. When she meets that hero, she should tell him, "I promise to blaze a path to the future. I am humanity's greatest hero." He then leaves, and shortly afterward, Frieren meets Hero Himmel for the first time. Back in the present, the trio finishes cleaning the statue. Frieren reflects that even now, the people remember the Hero of the South, and that he truly left his mark on history. The trio arrives at Graf Doc's domain. Frieren says they'll leave as soon as they restock their supplies, but Stark points out that whenever they visit a large town, Frieren usually ends up staying for at least a few months. Before they can argue about it, someone approaches them and explains that the Graf wishes to invite Frieren to an evening banquet, since she was part of the party that once saved this domain. At the banquet, Frieren thanks Graf Doc for the invitation. He then reveals that a demon has stolen his treasured heirloom. Frieren casually mentions that the same heirloom was already stolen once, back when Graf's great-grandfather was still alive. She agrees to help but asks for a grimoire as her reward, and the trio sets out. On the way, Frieren notes that at least this time they were given directions. Last time they weren't told anything and ended up finding the item at the top of a mountain. She explains that the sword attracts demons because it once belonged to a powerful demon. She also says that Hero Himmel was the one who retrieved the sword in the past, which is why she accepted this request. She doesn't want to waste his efforts. They eventually reach a nearby village only to find it completely empty. Soon after, they meet a strange woman who claims the village was destroyed by a demon wielding a sword. She says the demon slaughtered countless villages and killed everyone who lived there. As she mourns the dead, Frieren suddenly blasts one of the graves, revealing that it's empty. Frieren realizes that the woman herself is the demon with the sword, a demon that leaves no corpses behind. The demon calmly admits that she killed the villagers in order to eat them. The trio prepares for battle. The demon launches an attack, but all 3 dodge it. Frieren leaps into the air and delivers a single devastating strike, defeating the demon instantly. A flashback follows, where Hero Himmel says that the request was troublesome, but defeating the demon still mattered. He explains that these kinds of unpleasant tasks often end up saving many lives, and that he would never turn his back on people in need. Back in the present, the trio mourns the villagers who were killed and returns the sword. Frieren is pleased to receive her reward, a grimoire containing a spell that can turn a red apple into a green one. The trio reaches the Etwas Mountains. Frieren explains that this region has a much hotter climate because it's part of a volcanic zone. Fern excitedly says that they should be able to reach a hot spring soon. However, even after traveling a long distance, they still haven't reached a village. Frieren says it should be nearby, and soon they spot a small cabin. Inside the cabin, they meet a family. One of the family members explains that the nearby village was abandoned 30 years ago, and that all the hot springs dried up long ago. Frieren quietly comments that human villages can disappear in the blink of an eye. She adds that it will take about a week to reach the next town from here. The family also mentions that their great-grandfather once talked about a secret hot spring hidden somewhere in the mountains, though that was over 30 years ago. Hearing this makes Stark remember something. He says that since they've already come this far, they might as well try looking for it. The trio decides to go and leaves the cabin behind. They spend time traveling through the mountains, exploring the area, but find nothing at first. Frieren says they could be close, and explains that in her time they also had to wander around for a long time before finding places like this. She adds that hero Himmel was never satisfied unless he explored everything about a strange or unusual location. Frieren then explains that they can't reach the hot spring without passing through a monster's territory. Right on cue, a monster appears, and the trio prepares to fight. They defeat it and continue forward, eventually finding a hot spring. However, it turns out to be very small, nothing more than a simple footbath. Stark says it's still good, since this way all three of them can sit together. They relax there for a moment. Stark explains that he heard about this place from his master. A flashback follows, where Eisen talks about the hot spring in the Etwas mountains. He explains that it's only a footbath, but the view from there is beautiful. Eisen says that every pointless adventure he had with the party became a precious memory, and that he could never forget the view. Back in the present, Stark says he only wanted to see the same view his master once saw. As they head back, Stark looks exhausted and mutters that maybe the whole trip wasn't worth it after all. The trio arrives at a fortified city, where Frieren immediately settles into the hot springs. Fern comments that Frieren has barely left a bath since they arrived. Stark says they'll be staying in the city for another 2 days, and Fern adds that they have the entire day free tomorrow. Fern insists that Stark keep her company the next day since he's free as well. After hesitating, Stark suggests that they treat it like a date. Fern is so surprised that she drops the book she's reading, but then agrees and says she'll see him tomorrow. Feeling uneasy, Stark goes to talk to Frieren. He apologizes for asking Frieren something so difficult. Frieren brushes it off, saying the question wasn't impossible. After all, she's a lady too. She adds that if Stark were to take her on a date, she'd want him to take her out to dinner. Stark immediately complains, saying she sounds like a grandma spending time with her grandchild. Frieren scolds him for that comment. Afterwards, Frieren suggests several places that Fern might enjoy and takes Stark around the city to show them to him. Stark is surprised at how well Frieren seems to understand Fern. Frieren insists that she doesn't actually know much herself. Instead, she explains that Heiter told Frieren about Fern's likes and dislikes every chance he got. Heiter wanted Frieren to take the place of Fern's parents, but Frieren admits that she barely managed to understand Fern in the end. Even so, Stark praises her, saying she's doing a decent job as a parenting figure. The scene then shifts to Fern and Frieren, where Fern asks which dress she should wear. The next day, Fern and Stark finally go on their date, while Frieren relaxes and enjoys her time in the hot springs. During their date, Stark comments that Fern's outfit looks different from usual. He awkwardly wonders if she's always been this cute. Trying to move things along, Stark suggests visiting a nearby market, explaining that large towns often have rare magical items for sale. Fern realizes that this explains why so much strange stuff is piled up at their inn, and that she's been sleeping next to it all. The two talk about just how deep Frieren is into collecting magical items. They walk through the market together, and even get a discount on a few things because the sellers think they're a couple. Stark soon suggests checking out other places, saying the market itself isn't that interesting. They continue visiting different spots around the city. Eventually, they stop at a scenic viewpoint. Fern points out that statues of Hero Himmel appear in every town, and comments that there might be too many of them. Stark then asks if she's not enjoying the date, since she hasn't smiled once. Fern explains that the places he chose don't really feel like places he would normally pick. Stark apologizes and admits that he asked Frieren for help. He says he just wanted to make Fern happy, especially since it's their first date. Fern is still a little disappointed, but she's touched by the fact that Stark tried so hard for her. She says it's such a peaceful day, and as an orphan, she never imagined she'd get to experience something like this. She adds that it's all thanks to Heiter, while Stark gives credit to his own master as well. A flashback follows, where Stark asks Eisen why he adopted him. Eisen simply replies that it's because that's what Hero Himmel would have done. Back in the present, Fern and Frieren are relaxing in the hot springs. Frieren notices that Fern is in a good mood, and the next day the trio continues their journey. They reach close to the border, and Frieren says they must be getting closer since they've left the volcanic region behind. Once inside the border town near the northern plateau, Frieren explains that they won't get many chances to restock supplies from here on out, so they should gather whatever they can. The trio spends time exploring the town, buying supplies, and then moves on. As they enter the northern plateau itself, Stark comments that it looks pretty normal compared to what people usually say about it. Suddenly, 4 monsters appear and block their path. Frieren tells them to brace themselves and immediately engages in battle. After defeating the monsters, they continue forward and soon spot a village. There, they meet a man who offers to let them stay today in an empty cabin. In return, he asks them for a favor. A monster has been appearing further up the road, stopping merchants from traveling through the area.
He asks them to take care of it, explaining that adventurers rarely come to this land anymore. Frieren agrees without hesitation. Stark asks the man why he continues to live in such a dangerous place when he could easily leave. The man replies that this is where he was born and raised, and it's full of memories of his family. He says he doesn't want to abandon his hometown. The trio heads out and soon encounters the monster. As the fight begins, the monster attacks, but all three dodge its strikes. Fern and Frieren then land a powerful combined attack, killing it instantly. Frieren comments that they'll run into many more monsters like this throughout the northern plateau. Stark asks why they didn't just take the sea route instead. This triggers a flashback where the old party has just defeated a monster. Frieren suggests taking the sea route, but Hero Himmel responds that people still live in this land. He says he became a hero not just to protect his own home, but the homes of others as well. Back in the present, Frieren explains that many people still call the northern plateau their home. The trio prepares to continue forward, but Stark suddenly collapses, saying his knees have given out again. The trio arrives in a town and Stark is immediately surprised by how many bars there are. Fern explains that Heiter once told her this town is famous for Boshaft, said to be the finest spirit in the world. She adds that Heiter always blamed Frieren for never letting him drink it. As Frieren is talking about leaving, they meet an elderly man who recognizes her. Frieren realizes it's been 80 years since they last met and tells him that Heiter has passed away. The man, named Foss, is saddened by the news. He then reveals that he believes he has finally found Boshaft and asks for their help. He leads them to a nearby mine. Frieren explains that he has loved alcohol his entire life and has been searching for Boshaft for nearly 200 years. According to legend, Boshaft is buried somewhere in this area. He shows them an ancient monument and Fern is able to read the old writing on it. The inscription declares Boshaft as the finest spirit in the world. Fern explains that Frieren made her study ancient languages when she was young. Foss then leads them to a sealed stone door protected by magic. Foss believes Frieren can break it, but Frieren refuses, saying it would take months and these kids hate waiting. Even when Foss offers a grimoire and 20 gold coins, she declines. To her surprise, Stark and Fern urge her to accept because of the reward. Frieren warns them it could take 3 months, but they still agree. As time passes, they slowly dismantle the magic seal. Near the end, Frieren admits she isn't excited because Boshaft actually tastes terrible. She jokes that elves do ridiculous things just to pass time. A flashback reveals Frieren once met an elf named Milliard who admitted she carved the original Boshaft inscription out of boredom, even though it tasted awful. Back in the present, Frieren finally opens the door, revealing a room filled with Boshaft. They all taste it. Another flashback shows Heiter asking Frieren why she never searched for it. When she asked how he'd feel if it tasted awful, he said he'd just laugh. Now, Foss struggles to describe the drink while Frieren bluntly calls it terrible. Stark refuses to drink at first but is forced to try it and agrees it's awful. Even so, Foss invites the whole town to celebrate. As the trio prepares to leave, Foss admits the result was disappointing but says he had one of the best nights of his life and is glad they were there. The trio reaches Norm Company territory and has lunch. Fern playfully tosses a piece of bread onto Stark's plate, making a loud clunk. Frieren explains that the northern plateau is a barren land with almost no supply distribution, so this is their standard go-to food for now. Later, they spot a fortified city and enter. Frieren explains that this is the headquarters of the Norm Company, a powerful armed organization that transports goods all across the northern plateau. Fern asks why Frieren said there's no supply distribution, and Frieren admits she isn't fully aware of the current situation. She warns them to avoid causing trouble. They show their documents to a customs officer who lets them through, but then notices something unusual about Frieren and asks them to wait. They meet Norm, the company president, who demands that Frieren pay back a debt from 80 years ago. Frieren argues that she was told she could repay at any time, but Norm insists that the official documents overrule any verbal agreements. Frieren offers some gold, silver, and copper coins, telling him to keep the change, but Norm says it's far from enough. Norm then sentences her to 300 years of mine work. Frieren calmly tells Stark and Fern to take care of themselves, while Fern vows they'll find a way to buy her back. Norm insists she owes 300 Reich gold coins. In the mines, Frieren grumbles that she dislikes mining. She takes charge, directing workers and using her staff to make the digging easier. A flashback explains that the predecessor of Norm Company was a nobleman who built this barren land into a distribution network and even lent money without deadlines. Frieren doesn't like how she's treated, but since Norm came personally, she assumes he has his reasons. Norm explains that the Northern Plateau supply network has suffered. 30% of their army was lost to demon attacks, and the system is near collapse. Since the company relies on capital instead of a country's resources, they can rebuild from scratch. He says if they find iron ore in the mines, it would be enough to clear Frieren's debt, and she should be able to do it easily. He also warns that the supply system fails, many people will starve, urging Frieren to help. Frieren agrees, saying she had planned to repay the debt eventually. Back in the present, they found silver ore. Frieren rejoins Stark and Fern, who revealed they had planned to raid the mines that night. Frieren smiles, saying they'll finally be able to enjoy soft bread again, and the trio continues their journey. And with that, the continued Northern Travels arc comes to an end. Frieren, Fern, and Stark continue their journey deeper into the north, where the road ahead only grows harsher and more uncertain. This arc wasn't about big victories or grand battles. It was about traveling forward, facing small dangers, meeting new people, and slowly understanding what it means to move on after the journey is supposed to be over. In the next part of Season 2, the story shifts into even more serious territory with the Divine Revolt arc and the beginning of the Golden Land arc. But for now, this is where the continued Northern Travels arc ends.